Hi Fiber friends, and welcome to Fiber and Floral, a mostly knitting podcast. The weather outside is just wonderfully autumnal. It's a little bit cloudy, but the sun's popping out and the trees outside my window. We live on the 5th floor, and so we have these gorgeous view of red and orange and yellow and green. I'll post a photo because it's absolutely stunning. And it's around this time of year that everyone starts thinking about gift knits. And I'm typically not a gift knitter, to be honest. I I tend to only make things for my immediate family, like my husband or my kids or my mom. But this year, I have a really great team that I work with, and I am just so grateful for them and all the support and all the experience they've taught me this year or given me, and just they are my ideal coworkers. So I had in mind to knit some things for them, and so it got me thinking about what patterns I would use, be easy, what would be doable, especially since I'm going to be making for 5 or 6 people this year, maybe more. I have 5 people on my immediate team and 8 on my extended team. And so my plan is, if I can't get, I know I won't be able to knit for all 8 of them and all my family that I want to knit for, but at least to give them coupons saying I'm going to knit an item for you in the next year, or I will repair a garment of yours in the next year. But I've been rounding up ideas over the last couple months and kind of wanted to share with you all the patterns that I'm either considering to gift knit or am definitely going to be gift knitting this year. These are patterns that are really simple, something that I could just like chuck in my bag and knit pretty easily on the go. It's patterns that don't require a lot of yarn. A lot of them are even using yarn in my stash. And so I wanted to share with you and kind of make a roundup of what I'm knitting with. And I would love if you could drop below what you're going to be gift knitting as well. So I hope this is a really usable list for you to use as a jumping off point as we all start scrambling to gift knit for all of our loved ones. While I have been known to knit sweaters for my immediate family, they are the only ones who get that. I will not be knitting sweaters for anyone else. So all of these are going to be accessories, something that only require a skein or 2 of yarn and are free or really inexpensive, under €5 or $5 US. I believe all of them are, or something similar where you probably have a pattern already like that in your library. So I'm gonna break these down into categories, either scarves, hats, and then gloves and socks. So let's get started with my first gift knit. The first gift knit that I cast on this year is the Traveler Cowl by Andrea Mowry, and she designed this with a sport weight gauge of 21 stitches. However, in the pattern, she tells you that you can use any gauge you want, any yarn you want, and she gives you the measurements so you can knit this in any gauge. I imagine if you knit it with like a worsted or a bulky, it would go really, really fast. Or if you knit this with a fingering, it's gonna be really soft and drapey and lovely. So I am actually knitting around a worsted gauge. This is using my hand spun and hand dyed indigo. This is for a colleague who is also into natural dyeing, and I know she'll really appreciate this. So I am waiting. I actually need to spin up some more yarn because I overestimated how much yarn it would need. I underestimated how much yarn it would need, but that's a whole nother story. So the Traveler Cowl, it kind of an upside down hexagon shape. You start here at this corner and then knit down, and then as you're knitting down, you're also knitting across to form the top of the scarf, and then it'll leave you with a point and you'll do a decrease section and cast off on the side. So it's a really quick knit. It ends up looking a little bit like that around your neck. I really love this construction of a cowl because what it does is it provides a lot of bulk in the front where your coat is going to open, but it's relatively light on the back of your neck, so it's not too bulky with your hair. And I think it just provides a lot of warmth. Big fan of this construction. This is really popular right now, and it knits up quick. It's really fun, especially if you get like a color changing. I'm actually using a solid color, but if you use a color changing yarn, you kind of get a stripe effect that's really fun. So that is the first thing I'm going to be gift knitting this Christmas, the Traveler Cowl by Andrea Mowry, a super quick and fun, easy on the go knit. The second scarf I'm going to be knitting this Christmas is the Pressed Flower Kerchief by Amy Christoffers, and she has a whole series of these. I believe there's a pressed flower shawl and a pressed flower sweater and a cardigan and a hat, so you could go crazy if you love this motif. This kerchief is free from the hobby website, and I'm actually going to be making this for my mom. When she was here to visit over the summer, I took her to my local yarn shop, Volden, and she picked out these two colors for a scarf. And she lives in a really warm environment, so I'm actually going to be modifying this pattern for fingering weight. But I think it's still going to knit up really quickly. It's only 100 grams. I might even use less of the light purple. I think she wants the dark color to be the main color and then light to be the contrast color. And I think this is going to be really lovely and really wearable for her in her environment. So that's something also to think about, is when you're considering gift knitting, think about like where they live. I would love nothing more than a bulky weight shawl when it comes to January here. It's so cold, but my mom, no matter what time of the year it is never going to wear even like a DK weight shawl. She's never going to wear that. Fun fact, my husband and I actually got married in my hometown and in the southern United States. And on December 30th, when we got married, it was 25 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It is never cold there. So a light shawl is like a fingering weight shawl. It's about all she's gonna be able to wear even in winter. The next shawl or scarf I'm going to be knitting is the Sophie scarf by Petite Knit. We all have this pattern, right? Specifically, I had a colleague, my German partner teacher, there was an article that came out in Germany, I forget which newspaper, all about the Sophie scarf and how it's taking over the world and everyone is back to knitting. And she came to me and she was like, "Can you knit this for me?" And I, at the time, was like, "No, I'm not knitting that for you. You can knit it. You can learn to knit yourself." She has her other hobbies. And, but I decided that I actually was going to knit one for her this year. And I'm just using Stash. As you can tell, this has been in my stash a while. It is, I think it's Drops Fingering, Drops, maybe Flora. I have two of these. And then I have a lot of Drops Alpaca Silk left over from a sweater that I overestimated the contrast color. And so I'm going to be knitting her a Sophie scarf. I'm probably just going to knit to the end of this ball and then like start decreases and start like cast on another ball. And it's as long as it goes. So we'll see. So that's an easy one. If you don't have the Sophie scarf, there are several Sophie adjacent scarves, if I can use that phrasing, that are free on Ravelry, such as the Mara shawl by Audrey Bordego. This is a fingering weight shawl that has a broken rib and kind of a lacy pattern that I think is really stunning. I'm actually considering knitting this for myself come spring. I think this is a gorgeous shawl, and even though it looks really interesting and intricate, I think this would be a really easy pattern to memorize and would be such a fun gift knit. Another free Sophie adjacent pattern is the Italian Summer Scarf by the Italian Knitter. And this is actually a worsted weight gauge on 4mm needles. I think this would go so quickly, especially if you're in a warmer climate. You could use a cotton or a linen yarn like Lina. I believe this was actually designed with Lina, which is a half linen, linen viscose cotton blend. And I think even because of the yarn overs, it creates this like really nice lightweight fabric, especially in a warmer climate. This would be such a useful shawl. And if you're not in a warmer climate, you could still use like a Moto by Wool Dreamers or Peer Gynt or something like that. And add some bulk to it and some in a woolly worsted yarn, and I think it would still be really warm and really nice. So those are 2 patterns, and I think the Italian knitter has several similar patterns. I think she has a shawlette that you could also go to. So those are, if you don't own the Sophie shawl, don't feel like you have to buy that if you're gift knitting a lot of shawls. There's a lot of these other shawls that are free on Instagram, but also it is it's a classic for a reason. And it's something that I knit time and again. I've seen a lot of people who will buy like 1 skein of Cardiff cashmere, which I have in my local store for 16 euros. And they just get 1 skein. I think it's 125 meters, and they knit from tip to tip and use the whole ball. And it's a really nice luxury item that most people could not afford, and you've gift knitted it, and it's relatively affordable for us as knitters, and is really quick. So if you really want to give someone like a luxury cashmere item, that would be maybe a good alternative. I'm considering knitting one of those for myself. So yeah, the last scarf I'm going to be knitting this Christmas is I should say cowl, is the Grid Gambit cowl by Samantha Gurrett. And I've already knit this. I bought this as soon as it came out. It is very similar to the Traveler shawl in that it is knit in like an upside down hexagon. I am trying to unravel all my yarn without losing everything. So where did it start? Where did I start? So here we go. So I've knit almost to where I start the decreases, I believe. And it is very similar to the Travel shawl, but instead of these like textured stripes, it has a grid pattern. This is so fun. It looks really hard. It is not. I say this all the time. I'm shocked by how easy and fun this is. It is 3 rows of knitting for every 4th row of a purl. And then these are formed with slip stitches. So there's actually no color work. You're only holding 1 yarn at a time. And it's just so fun. You could use a color changing yarn for the contrast color, and then a solid color for your main color. And it's so fun. I'm actually using Samilla Gots by BC Gone, held with their new alpaca lace, Svala, I believe it's called. And then I'm holding it with my own hand-dyed, hand-spun. This is hand-dyed using Canadian goldenrod that I picked. And this is also going to be for a colleague. And when I think of her, I associate her with this color yellow. She looks so good in this color. And I actually picked this goldenrod from outside of our school. And so I think it's going to be actually really special to see. And we grew these they're dots of orange. We grew this orange flower that I used to press into it. You can see that right, where is it? Right here. Can you see that? Yeah. Marigolds and coreopsis. I grew those in our classroom this year that we share. So I hope she finds this really special. It's like a little bit of our story over the last year together in our classroom. So that's what I'm making for her. Good thing they don't watch this, huh? Okay, so those are all the shawls that I'm knitting this Christmas, I think. Let's move on to hats. So I have 2 go-to hat patterns that I'm going to share with you. There are thousands more. My all-time go-to that I've knit so many times, I've lost count. Actually, should I go get it? I'm going to go get it. This is a hat that I have knit for so many people. I've knit it for my husband, I've knit it for myself, I've knit it for my brother. This is the Jason's Cashmere hat by Melissa Thompson. It is a free pattern in worsted weight, and it is just really stunning with these cables and the texture. I just love it. It is only in 1 size. However, I find because of the ribbing, it manages to fit both me and my husband, and we have very different head circumferences. So it's just a really nice, it looks really stunning with the cables, but it goes really quickly. I think I panic knit this one because I lost my hat and like 2 days before Christmas last year and panic knit this because I just needed more headwear. And I think I knit this in maybe 48 hours. Definitely something you could do over a weekend. It goes so quickly. And I knit this in double Sunday, held with like drops kid silk from my stash, and really, really stunning. And then if you just want something really simple, something you can knock out, my favorite go-to like simple all knit beanie is the Brighton Beanie Chunky by Angie Grayson of My Dear Puppet. And heads up, she is one of my dearest friends. She is a designer here in Berlin, and I just adore her knitwear. This is an Aran weight beanie knit on 4.5 millimeter needles. This is actually what I use to teach, like when my kids finish, I teach a knitting club at school, and when the kids finish their first scarf, I let them move on to this beanie, which with Angie's permission, she has lovingly gifted that pattern to my school. It is so easy, so quick, so incredible. I've knit so many. I don't even have any to show you because I just give them all away. The Chunky is an Aran weight, or I use worsted, or even sometimes I'm able to get it off with a DK, like a heavy DK. But there's also a fingering weight beanie, which I've probably knit 10 of these of itself, the fingering weight, because the newborn size, I should mention that this goes, both patterns go from newborn to extra large adult. So you really get so much out of these. The fingering weight beanie for the newborn size takes roughly 20 to 25 grams. I've knit so many of these. Like I can get two newborn beanies out of one skein of knitting for Olive. So this is just my go-to, especially like I'll get like a nice sock yarn. I'll post a picture here. And I could get like 3 or 4. I think I've gotten like 2 beanies and a pair of socks out of one nice sock yarn. So this is just something that I know, like I'm always going to have something in stash for this one. And anybody in my life who has a baby gets one of these hats. It's so easy, so good, so quick. And I want to mention that she just uploaded all of her patterns to Ravelry. She's been on Etsy for a long time. She also has a new website, which I think is going to be out by the time that I post this video. And there is a 20% discount, I believe. Cross my fingers, I'm right on that. Definitely go check her out. These patterns are amazing. I have been knitting Angie's patterns for my kids. She specializes in kids, but these 2 patterns are available from newborn to extra large adult. She's incredible. My kids get one of these hats, or her balaclava. Oh, you should go check that one out too. Her balaclava is like amazing. So yeah, I knit these for my kids every single Christmas. They're probably gonna get one again this Christmas, and they always need new hats because they're always losing them. So yeah, that is my 2 hat patterns that I have knit and am going to be continuing to knit. And then moving on to hands and feet. I want to start with feet. No, I want to start with hands. There is no greater pattern than the World's Simplest Mittens by Tin Can Knits. This is a pattern that is available for free on Ravelry, and I believe it has instructions for like kid to adult sizes, and then like all the gauges like fingering, DK, worsted. You could literally use any yarn. And what I've also done in the past, I'll pull them out. I actually modified the pattern to where I just did like little fingering knits, and these knit up so quickly. Like in a weekend, you can knit this. I held a fingering weight with a mohair to get a DK gauge, and then I added on top where I actually knit these too small because it was my first gloves. But a lovely pattern that I am planning on knitting again this Christmas with volant twine. I'm going to knit them in fingering weight because I always get really warm actually. So I just picked up a skein of volantine ovis sock, and I'm going to make these for myself. So I'm going to knit a pair of socks for me, probably one of In Her Skeins sock patterns. I'll post a picture here. I forget the name. And then I'm going to knit these gloves with the remainder, I can get a pair of socks out in 50 grams and maybe even less most of the time. And so I'm going to use the other 50 grams for matching mittens. And what I'm going to do is, because the socks are going to have this little lace, I'm going to embroider the mittens using a technique in embroidery on knits. Let me see if I can find the original pattern. So you could do, and I think you could do this too, even if you don't have this book, although I really recommend it. You could just Google embroidery on knitting and do something. This is such a simple, like a little lazy daisy stitch and I knit, and it's just beautiful. It would be so stunning. What a special gift. So that would be a great pattern. You could do this with any yarn you have in hand. I guarantee you in your stash, you have enough to do these mittens. If you want something a little fancier, then there is the 7-side mittens from Annabelle Williams. These are a DK weight pattern that I think would go so fast. They just have this really stunning cable detail on this. They're free on Ravelry, and there is a matching hat pattern as well called this 7-side beanie hat. And this would make the cutest matching set. I think this would be really special to give someone. What a lovely, meaningful item. And then moving on from gloves into socks. My go-to sock pattern is the That's So Basic sock from Summer Lee, and I give these a lot. I've knit this for myself a lot. I've knit these for other people. I think the current pattern is only an adult, but in her book, The Sock Project, she has vanilla socks for kids. And so I've actually already knit the socks for my kids. Well, for my oldest. I still have to knit the pair for my youngest. I'm going to give these to her on St. Nicholas Day, which is a holiday we celebrate here of the legend of St. Nicholas. And they put candy in their socks, according to the original legend. And I'm also going to gift both of them a pair of matching vanilla socks. And so I just followed the recipe in here, and they do fit her. I had her try them on because she's very picky. And so I wanted to make sure that they were actually according to her liking, but she hasn't gotten them yet. These were so quick. When I cast on and did the little scalloped edge the night before, and then I took these on a hike with me, and I think I finished like 75% of them just while I got a quick 3-hour hike with a couple friends. So these are socks that you could definitely finish probably even in a day if you're really going, depending on the age of your child. I think for my youngest is 2.5, and I think I'm just gonna knock those out really quickly in a weekend. And they're so cute. Another one of my go-to sock patterns that my husband really likes, I've gift knitted him a couple of these, are the summer camp socks by Knitterella. These are only available in a women's medium, but I've just modified the stitch count. It is a 3x1 rib gauge with like a really cool athletic stripe there. And these are great, especially when you aren't knitting for someone living in your house, because they cover a range. You can kind of guess a little bit more on someone's foot size because of the ribbing. It's just going to squish in. And I would recommend, if you're gift knitting for someone for the first time for socks, that you do keep it to a rib, because it's just going to fit them so well. You're not really going to have to do any guesswork there. I would recommend the summer camp socks. There's also a DK version of this that's also available for free, and it's called the Slow Morning DK sock by Camille Hang of Wool & Sun Designs. I want to knit a pair of these for me this year, actually. I think DK socks go so fast, and once again, these are ribbed socks. They're going to fit perfectly, and I think these would make a great knit, especially if you live in a colder environment. Thick socks are a winter must. I learned that real quickly, moving from a really warm environment to a really cold environment, how important socks are. And DK hand knit woolen socks are such a luxury gift, such a thoughtful, kind. They will use them all the time. Every time we're at a Christmas market, my husband pulls out his hand knit socks because they're so warm. So I really recommend the slow morning socks. I'm definitely going to be knitting those probably for my husband this Christmas, and then also probably a pair for me because that just seems really stunning. And then the last sock pattern I want to mention, if you, let me see if I can find them. If you kind of in between a fingering and a DK sock are a mohair fingering sock. This is still a DK sock, but it's a little bit thinner of a fabric, but so much warmer with the mohair. So if you have some leftover mohair in your sock, in your stash, in your sock, although mohair in your sock would definitely be warm. Maybe not comfortable though. The Indoorsy sock by Sonder Yarn Co. Is another free pattern that I've knit with for myself. It's another rib knit sock holding fingering and mohair with a 3mm needle. Knits up super fast, is really fun, and would make a really stunning gift. Talk about like a luxury, like a mohair sock. These are my go-to Christmas market socks when it's cold and dark and I'm gonna be outside in freezing temperatures for more than an hour. Put these on your feet, they are perfect. Your feet will stay warm. So those are all the patterns that I'm going to be gift knitting this Christmas. I hope you found that list useful, and most of these patterns are ones I hope you can knock out in a weekend or a week, and are just really mindless, enjoyable knitting, because gift knitting is stressful, but it's also nice to have a project that you can just sit down and mindlessly knit, so it keeps the stress out of it a little bit. So yeah, please write down in the comments every time I do one of these like Ravelry roundups. You always comment with like more, and they're so good, your recommendations. A lot of you have been knitting a lot longer than me and have so much more wisdom. So please share that with us. Let me know if you like any of them, what you're going to be gift knitting this Christmas, if you have any tips. Thank you guys for being here. Happy knitting, and I'll see you soon. Bye.